Let's move on to India. Speaking of weak idiots, Corey Morgan says India has suspended visa service in Canada. This will screw thousands of people. Trudeau has caused a diplomatic shitstorm. His word alone isn't good enough. So what he says is not believable just on its face by itself, right? Just his word, just him saying, trust me on this. I'm going to need to see some evidence, bud. He says, Corey continues, we need to see some evidence here to justify his actions. Yes, we definitely need to see some evidence. We are not going to see any evidence. Rupa is responding to Derek. Derek says, India just escalated tensions. No. By suspending visa services in Canada, a responsible power would have taken no further action and sought diplomatic negotiations when and if possible. I know this plays well domestically in India, but the world is watching too. Rupa says, you have it backwards. It was Trudeau who was extremely irresponsible in making these explosive allegations against a Democratic ally without providing a shred of proof, all to preempt a Globe and Mail scoop. I didn't know the Globe and Mail angle. I'd heard rumors that there was a Globe and Mail story coming, which is why Trudeau jumped on this and announced it in the House of Commons. But I think that that's still probably a mistake. You call the paper and say, I'm in discussions with the Indian government and I'll give you an exclusive when we sort this out. Like, you call the paper and you mea culpa a little bit, maybe. And not to say that the newspaper shouldn't run with the story, but if it's diplomatically sensitive, a situation like this is potentially diplomatically sensitive, then historically newspapers have not run things to see how they play out, if that makes sense. And I'm certainly not advocating for censorship in the way that, for censorship, if a newspaper has an article that, shows Justin Trudeau is doing X, Y, Z, and it's not good. If you don't have a conclusion, if you don't know, right? And in this situation, I don't know how you can know. I don't know that it's responsible to run with the story. And I really don't think it's responsible to run with coming out and announcing it on the House of Floor without any proof. And so I think that it's very, very accurate where Rupa is talking about here, what she's saying, that it's irresponsible of Trudeau to do what he's doing. Now, if you've got a smoking gun or something like that, then that's a little bit different. But even that would be politically sensitive, right? Like, the Globe and Mail could say, listen, you've got 5 days and we're going to run with this. And if this isn't in this, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to break this story, but you've got this amount of time to give India a heads up, let them know. But instead of doing that, he comes to the House of Commons floor, and it seems really, really strange. Anyway, back to this. India is responding in its national interests, as any responsible state would. I know this plays well domestically in Canada with certain constituents, but the world is watching too. So, yeah, I think Rupa's correct. Here's True North, and it says, Prime Minister Trudeau is asked about the evidence to back up Canada's accusation that India murdered a Khalistani activist in Surrey, BC. And, I don't hear any evidence in this answer. Here you go.
Prime Minister, since you made your statement in the House of Commons the other day, some of the reactions, some of the conversation's been about the quality of the evidence, how much Canada has. You said it was credible. Can I ask you to characterize it just a little bit further about how extensive it is, how solid it is, and whether you might ever share some of that with the public? So how extensive is this evidence?
I think it's extremely important that as a country with a strong and independent justice system, we allow those justice processes to unfold themselves with the utmost integrity. But I can assure you, the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons Monday morning was not done lightly. It was done with, or Monday afternoon, was done with the utmost seriousness.
That did not answer the question. How solid is your evidence? My decision to share the accusations on the floor of the House of Commons was done seriously. Right. Robert says, Ottawa calls for calm after India issues travel advisory. Good job, Canada. Rupa says, make these allegations with no proof, possibly trying to preempt a Globe and Mail scoop, expel a diplomat while investigations are still underway, ratchet up your travel advisory and expect nothing to happen. Amateur hour from the Trudeau government. Calm down, everybody. I mean, we didn't say anything too crazy. You accused Modi of killing a guy with no proof. Yowza. I'm going to play the first 2 minutes of this. This is news from India, and it lays out accurately that Justin Trudeau is playing Khalistani politics because he needs the votes to maintain his majority to continue what he's doing. And I mean, it's pretty good Canadian political commentary, if you ask me, all the way from India. Here we go.
To blow up. He wanted the attention and the coverage. He wanted this clash with India. The question is why? After all, India is not China or Russia or North Korea. We're not talking about some rogue state or a Western rival. We are talking about the world's largest democracy, also a very important Western partner. Why did Justin Trudeau make a spectacle out of this? To answer that, we need to understand Canada's politics. Basically, two things about it. Their last general election was held in the year 2021. Trudeau's party emerged as the biggest party in Parliament, but they were short of majority, around 10 seats short. That's when Jagmeet Singh entered the picture. Now, Jagmeet Singh is a self-declared Khalistani. He leads Canada's New Democratic Party. Thanks to Jagmeet's support, Trudeau became Prime Minister. If he leaves, Trudeau leaves. He will be out of power. Do you see why that's a problem? Justin Trudeau needs the support of a Khalistani leader to stay in power. So is it really surprising that he shields Khalistanis? That's one reason, the poll arithmetic. The second reason is the Sikh vote in Canada. Around 2.1% of Canada's population is Sikh. It is the fastest growing religious group in the country. Today you can see Sikhs in top positions in government, in the corporate sector, even in Canada's armed forces. Not all of them are Khalistanis, and this distinction is very, very important to make. Most Canadian Sikhs are well-meaning, rule-abiding people. The problem is, Canada's leaders have got it wrong. They think Sikh equals Khalistan. So what do? They ignore or support the Khalistani elements. It's a tactic that is almost as old as elections. Here in India, we have different terms for it. We call it appeasement politics or vote bank politics. Justin Trudeau is doing the very same thing, supporting terrorists and justifying it as freedom of expression. And don't think Justin Trudeau is the first leader to play this card. His father did the same. That's Pierre Trudeau. He was Canada's Prime Minister in the 1970s and 80s. That was the peak of the Khalistan movement. In 1982, India wanted to extradite a Khalistani from Canada. This man, Talvinder Parmar, he used to lead a terror group called Babbar Khalsa. India wanted his extradition, but Pierre Trudeau, then Prime Minister of Canada, refused to extradite him. And the decision made no sense. Both India and Canada are Commonwealth countries, so technically extradition should have been easy. Then why did Senior Trudeau refuse? Reports say because India...
So there's a lot of history. There's a lot of hurt feelings. And it seems like India and Canada had gotten past. I mean, it's one of those things that getting past as much as you can, you continue to trade and so on and so forth. But the relationship between India and Canada in 2018, 19, 21, 22, pretty good. You know, we traded. Saskatchewan has 40% of their exports going to India. So it seemed like things were all right. Seemed like we were all friends, Commonwealth countries, everybody's cool with everything. And all of a sudden, it seems like that's all turned to poop because Justin Trudeau is a immature person who can't handle how much of a bad time he had at the G20. And I mean, I guess there's a whole lot more going on with that, but still, Jeepers Creepers, the whole thing is impacting Canada, Canadian businesses, everything, because Justin Trudeau is bad at his job. CBC Watcher points this out. Things are going swimmingly for Canadian businesses in India thanks to Trudeau. Montreal Gazette is reporting Tim Hortons, McCain's in India face boycott calls on social media as tensions escalate. Right? So, yikes. Marco lays this out, 11 things what Trudeau gained from accusing India. First and foremost, the accusations are a temper tantrum. India's Prime Minister Modi, the G20 host, isolated him and paid very little attention to him. Justin is lashing out. 2, Trudeau's political standing among voters is declining, and this contrived crisis portrays him as a defender of democratic values. 3, it elevates Trudeau's international profile as he prepared for UN meetings. 4, and they're at the UN right now. 4, it diverts attention from China's interference in Canadian elections and other affairs, elevating the narrative of Indian interference. It diminishes the focus on China just as an inquiry is about to start. I don't think we're about to start. Are we about to start an inquiry with the hand-picked judge? Yeah, right. It's going to focus on India. It's not going to talk about China at all. Anyway, number 5, Trudeau's actions are a political concession to maintain support for his minority government from Jagmeet Singh and his party. Singh will enjoy the attack on India's Modi for banning him from entering India. 6, the move helps Trudeau with his Liberal caucus skeptics. It makes him appear tough, a defender of democracy, and more importantly, capable of making the necessary deals with Singh to keep the Liberals in office. Number 7, Indians are proud people and will react to escalating tensions, evicting a Canadian diplomat, closing visas for Canadians, escalating tensions, benefiting Trudeau's agenda. Justin says he doesn't want to provoke India, but that's precisely what he is doing. He's very interested in keeping this going. Witness the travel advisory against India and the insinuations that India tampered with his plane. So, I still don't know if that's coming from Trudeau and the ministers or if that's coming from the reporter. What I heard was the reporter asking about sabotage to Bill Blair, and Bill Blair said, I don't want to talk about that. I didn't hear Bill Blair suggesting sabotage. Now, if Blair had suggested sabotage in a previous speech and the reporter was following up, then it's valid. But I had not heard any previous speculation about the sabotage thing. So I'm staying away from it because I need a base source. I don't have anything that says Trudeau and his ministers said the Indian government sabotaged anything. So I think it's really strange that this tampering with the plane angle is coming out. It seems contrived. It seems like a press-driven thing, but I don't know. It may not be. So that's just my conclusion now until I find more information. Number 8, Canada-India conflict distracts international attention from China's current actions regarding Taiwan. It benefits China. That's an interesting angle that I thought, man, like that's certainly something that I hadn't considered, but wasn't in my analysis. It distracts, number 9, it distracts from the many domestic issues plaguing Trudeau government. For as long as Canadians are talking about Canada-India, they're not talking about food inflation, housing affordability, and they're not talking about the inquiry on foreign interference, the Barbara Litch prosecution, or the massive protests against cultural or curtailing parental rights, which Justin and Jagmeet favor. 10, the distraction from these important Canadian issues shifts attention away from the leader of the opposition and his message. Poilievre gets less airtime. And 11, the damage to Canada-India relations hinders trade and investment opportunities between both countries, which benefits India's enemy, China. So, yeah, it's overall not good. And here's Justin Trudeau saying, I want them to work with us collaboratively. Right. That's not going to happen. Here we go.
Aider à s'assurer que la justice soit faite. Call upon the government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course.
Right. Which sounds reasonable, but it's not when you're talking about state actors to state actors. Okay, it's just not. You need to. It's a very, very delicate diplomatic thing. If you've got evidence that another country committed an assassination on your soil, you don't scream that accusation out from the rooftops. That's not how you deal with that, unless you're purposely trying to distract from a dozen other scandals. Jim Murphy says this, when asked about the intelligence reports, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said she couldn't comment without risking the investigation and Canada's obligation to its Five Eyes partners. Then why make the announcement? So part of this is now that they've made this announcement and there's an investigation into the murder, they can't talk about it anymore, right? So we've accused India and we can't unring that bell, excuse me. Pretty wild stuff, right? Here's Canada has India diplomats' communications in bombshell murder probe sources. So these are anonymous sources from the government saying what's information they supposedly have, but nobody's shown the information. And I just think that's crazy. Sources tell CBC News Indian officials have not denied the existence of of intelligence in private. A non-denial is not a concession that you're correct. Like, we're just not going to answer that ridiculous question. Next question is not, you're right. Next question. Canadian sources say that when pressed behind closed doors, no Indian officials have denied the bombshell allegations at the core of the case, that there's evidence to suggest Indian government involvement in the assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. I can assure you that the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons was not done lightly, Trudeau said Thursday in New York after attending the United Nations General Assembly. It was done with the utmost seriousness. The Canadian government has not released its evidence and has suggested it could emerge during an eventual legal process. An eventual legal process. So we'll give you the evidence when we get around to it. Right. There's an active RCMP investigation into Nijar's death, and Trudeau said the government doesn't want to interfere in that process. Interference would be disclosing details before the investigation is complete. Yes? No? So they do not want to give any more evidence. They can't because there's an investigation, and so they're snookered, but they've created an international incident that has snookered themselves. It doesn't make any sense. it doesn't make any sense unless they're trying to cause damage. Rupa is responding to the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail says Ottawa owes Canadians the full truth of the killings of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And Rupa says Canada's national newspaper of record argues in its editorial that Canadians deserve the truth behind Trudeau's as yet unsupported allegations against India and point out that Trudeau is isolated on the world stage. What do you mean isolated? Nobody else believes Trudeau and says, yeah, India, pony up, man. We think that there's something hinky going on here. The only other country in the world that believes Canada without any evidence is Pakistan. And so Kian says, after Trudeau accused India of assassinating someone in Canada, the only nation in the world willing to trust and stand shoulder to shoulder with Trudeau is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. What a badge of honor. Right. Kian again says, Justin Trudeau says India killed someone in Canada. He offered no proof. On the other hand, there's clear evidence pointing towards China killing a political dissident in Canada. And he says nothing. Why? You know why. I know why. We all know why. Somebody's taking orders from somebody. And again, I don't know what the structure is. If China is on the top and the WEF and the United Nations and everybody else are underneath, I could believe that. And the reason that that's one of the theories that I have is because China is communist. Communism is what's being spread. I could believe that whoever's in charge of spreading the communism from China is influencing the WHO, the United Nations, and the rest. It stems from the same place, I think. So I could see that, but I don't know if the China is in charge or if the United Nations is driving it. If they're partners, if there's a group above these people, because it's clear Justin Trudeau seems to be working for somebody else. And it seems clear that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is influencing the WHO, is influencing the United Nations, is influencing a whole bunch of supranational agencies. And so I just don't know who the first, and like Soros, George Soros is in that mix as well. I just don't know how it all stacks up, but it's very interesting to me to look at all of these not competing interests, but all of these powerful, influential organizations that are pushing this, and they don't care what the citizens think. It's very, very interesting because there's so many layers of bureaucracy. You know what I mean? Like you've got the United Nations, you've got the UN, you've got WHO, you've got all these layers and layers and layers, and then you've got each layer in Canada as well. How could anybody get anything done at all about anything? Whew. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.